Second Online Safety Day, ministers have also announced tougher rules to tackle self-harm content. Social media platforms will have to stop the material appearing in the feeds of both children and adult users. French politicians have ousted their Prime Minister François Bayrou over proposed spending cuts. It means President Emmanuel Macron's looking for his fifth PM in just 2 years. And Heathrow's Terminal 4 has been evacuated while firefighters respond to what they're calling a possible hazardous materials incident. All other terminals are open and operating as normal. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 13 points at 92.21. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather becoming dry across much of the UK tonight, just some isolated showers and a low of 2 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Monday's Cross Question. On the panel with me, to my left, Emily Sheffield, columnist for the London Standard, who was its editor when it was known as the London Evening Standard. Next to her is Tom McTague, the editor-in-chief of the New Statesman. He has got this magnificent tome out called Between the Waves, the hidden history of a very British revolution, 1945 to 2016. I wonder why I picked 2016. We'll find out in a moment. To my right, Joe Tanner, communications consultant, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Mayor of London, and Tim Farron, the Liberal Democrat environment spokesperson and MP for Westmorland and Lonsdale, also, of course, the former leader of the Liberal Democrats. They're here to take your calls. Questions, please. 0345 6060 973.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Right, let's go to our first text question from Scott in West Hampstead. He says, does the government's Online Safety Act go anywhere near far enough in protecting children from the vast array of potential online harms? And should the government go even further and follow Australia's lead in banning smartphones and social media accounts for under 16-year-olds? Tim Farron.
Yeah, it's one of these things where it's difficult to be a liberal, easy to be a libertarian. Well, it is, because if you're a libertarian, just say anything goes and do what you like and hang the consequences. To be a liberal is more difficult and better. I think, I would say I support the Online Safety Act. I think there's obviously clearly flaws within it. But in the end, keeping children safe is incredibly important. That's about protecting their freedom as they grow, access to pornography, access to self-harm and suicide sites. I think these are things it's absolutely right for a civilised country to seek to do. I think this government's made good steps in the right direction. Lots of loopholes within it, though, I'm afraid. And if it's about keeping children safer, I would propose us going further. One thing that the Liberal Democrats asked to do in the data bill, and made an amendment which the government did not support, was to prevent social media companies harvesting data from people under 16. And given that an awful lot of what is wrong with social media is the way in which people's preferences are engineered and then played to, that would be a way of protecting them. We were sad that the government didn't agree with us on that.
What was their reasoning for not agreeing to it?
It's a good question. I think applicability, practicalities, all the rest of it. But I think when all said and done, that was an admission. The government feels they haven't got the power against the online giants that they ought to have. And we elect governments, and whether we like them or not, they're accountable to us. Those who own huge, vast corporations, the social media corporations, are not elected or accountable to anybody. So we expect our governments to stand up for us, especially for those who are the least powerful in our communities, our children.
What about the questioner's point about Australia? They're banning smartphones and social media accounts for under 16-year-olds. Although whenever I say that, somebody then texts me, so, well, it's not quite that simple. But let's assume that's what they're doing. Is that something that we should be looking at?
I'm not convinced we should. I do think we should allow parents and allow schools to be able to make these sorts of decisions. Having said all that, it's at the time smartphones kind of came out and young people had access to them, probably anybody who was raising siren voices and I don't think I was one of them, would probably have been dismissed as being, old-fashioned and fuddy-duddy and interfering. But the reality is it has had a massive and I think tangible impact on the well-being and mental health of young people. It's not just what mobile phones lead to, or rather what smartphones and what's on them lead to. It's kind of a whole range of things that keep young people from other experiences, from being outdoors, from being outside. As many brighter people than me have observed, perhaps over the last few generations, we have kept children so safe, we've done them harm. We've kept them indoors. And in doing so, we've allowed them to not build resilience, to not get a love of the outdoors, and not to communicate with people in a face-to-face way like we are doing now. Okay. I think it's really dangerous. So I think that the balance of a balance sheet of smartphones for young people at least is clearly negative.
All right. Jo Tanner.
On the point about smartphones and social media accounts for under 16-year-olds, I'm really torn on this because I've got a 17-year-old. And so I've witnessed his journey with a phone, and, the stuff that he can tell me is nonsense before I've even worked out it's nonsense. Actually, sometimes it's amazing how quickly I've become the technophobe in the family. I feel like I'm significantly older sometimes than my years.
You're
because
well
I'm
past it, aren't you?
I am. Seriously, menopause and trying to work out the latest thing on a smartphone. I've absolutely had it. And he'll be like, Mum, you don't do it like that. And I can hear myself saying that to my mum, teaching her to use probably a BlackBerry or something years ago that she would have had. And so the challenge I've got is I do feel that I have seen other parents who have sort of almost disengaged from the discussion about what is on the phone. They give their child a device and then kind of go, that's it, you're off in the world with it. And there's, I always had a rule, which was I pay the bill. So if I want to look at what's on that phone at any point, I will look at what's on that phone. So I would spot check what my son was talking about, what he was following, what accounts he'd signed up to, especially if he was trying to make any transactions because they'd be coming out of my account. But I've seen other parents who have absolutely no idea what their kids are doing.
I mean, without going into private information, did that lead to difficult conversations sometimes? Because we had a caller in the last hour who was having to have a conversation with her 12-year-old who had accessed some sort of dodgy video on YouTube on their television. And she thought she'd sort of protected him from everything. And then she saw this search term and she hasn't had the conversation yet.
I think the worst I saw was the tone of a conversation about somebody. And I said, you do realise we don't talk like that about other people. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a sort of a misogynistic phrase or anything like that. It was just something that was said. I think somebody else had said something about another kid at school, and I didn't like the response that I'd seen. And we had a long conversation about it. And I said, I don't pay for that device for you to then, engage in that sort of conversation to spread stuff about somebody or to continue a conversation that's inappropriate. But actually, on the whole, we have a lot of conversations. It's actually sparked a lot of really interesting conversations in my house. He'd watch footage of Donald Trump doing something, would start a conversation with me about, do you think this is right or do you think that's wrong? And, there is an outside world and there's a reliance on tech for loads of stuff that we can't stop that happening now. Kids are using their phones to pay for all sorts. They're using their devices for things that we probably never expected them to. And I don't think you can row back from that. But I don't see a conversation. I only see the conversation in schools being about, well, we should just ban them. But what's the education? Where are we talking about the frameworks of how these are used? Where are we talking about the boundaries? I don't see that conversation happening at all. And I think that's a bigger issue.
Tom McTague, you've just had a child. Do you look at this debate and you're sort of thinking, oh my God, this lies ahead for my child. How do I cope with this? How do I handle it?
Absolutely. I mean, fascinating listening to that. I've got 3 children, 8, 4 and 3. And the thought of it coming down the track is completely petrifying. We were at a book club with a load of dads in my local area, and we were talking about this. It came up at the end of the discussion, and there was a question. Somebody said, who would ban smartphones for children? And every dad put their hand up.
Really?
Yeah, in the group.
Interesting.
And I was quite surprised, because at the time, that was a policy. I think it was Miriam Cates on the right of the Conservative Party, and this would have been a sort of a group of liberal London dads, and all of them were in favour of it. And I think I'm probably in favour of it, certainly up to a certain age. Because I know what parents do at the moment is they try and form little unions in the classes to come together and say, do we all agree no smartphones until 12 or 11. Let's hold the line until a certain point, because if one breaks, everybody breaks, and then your kid's coming home and saying, I need a smartphone, so-and-so's got a smartphone. So that's very attractive.
When I was at school, it was a chopper.
Yes. That was a
But for the uneducated, I mean a bike.
Rally.
Yeah, we knew that. We were just letting you have your moment, Ian.
So I find it quite attractive up to a certain age to have the government step in and make my life easier. You know, it makes parents' life easier. I take the point, though, maybe you can't row back from certain things. But I don't think we just have to accept it's kind of all or nothing, Wild West, or a complete ban. There must be sensible things we can do.
It does seem odd, though, that apparently 11% of schools have banned smartphones in their schools. And you think, well, what are the other 89% doing?
Yeah. I mean, that seems absolutely common sense. Of course, you can't have a smartphone in school, or if you take it into school, put it in a locker.
Should be banned in schools as well.
Yeah, probably because they can see that it's unruly in the back of the class.
But we also had online learning, and sometimes people use their phones as part of that experience. So there was almost this message saying, well, it's fine to use the devices in some respect, but now we're out of that period. Now you can't have them anywhere near a school. But it was convenient when we needed to teach kids remotely that we wanted the devices around, and then suddenly we don't want them anymore. That's really confusing for kids to see.
We've changed at our school from reading, just normal reading books, to reading on a device. And we find that kind of slightly horrible. Well, I don't want to read on a device. I don't want my kids learning how to read books on a phone or a tablet.
That's if they learn to read. My sons are 17 and 21, and they were, I guess, really at the top of the experiment, the big tech experiment. Neither of them read. And I was a voracious reader. My husband was an actor, is a voracious reader, still reads poetry to me most nights. Thanks.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so lovely.
My sons, I don't think have picked up a book since they were 14. They are forced to at school. So they really are. I think they really have been in the experiment. And I think there's a lot of what we need to stand back and say, what actually have the smartphones and the social media given to our children that's positive? What has been hugely negative? And really start unpicking from there. And I think in the meantime, I think they are up against a sort of addiction with big tech, which is so carefully manipulated that I see young children, your kids' ages, they see a phone, they go mental. Yeah. They just want to get their hands on it because they see older children having it. Then we're on there, they're completely transfixed. Some parents are brilliant at holding back. Others I see handing monitors to their kids age 3. I don't really blame them because they might have very little childcare. They just want that child to be quiet for 10 minutes at the lunch table. But we're up against big tech, and we cannot underestimate how clever they have been at trapping your attention. And worst is that we are the worst examples. I'm constantly on my phone, but that's because my whole life is on my phone now.
I feel guilty about that.
It does feel like we are standing, like King Canute trying to stop the sea coming at us. But we shouldn't be powerless about it.
When I was introducing you all at the beginning of the programme, I noticed that Joe, Emily and Tom were all looking at their phones and fiddling about with their phones while I was introducing them. And I mean, that's what we've come to, isn't it? Where I've got mine open here. If I've got a new text message that comes in, I want to see what it is now. I don't want to wait till the end of the hour.
We were all just saying how brilliant your show was going to be and how good it was.
Because he wasn't looking at his phone.
We were totally self-promoting.
Listen, we've got a follow-up call here from John in Reading. John, what would you like to say?
Good evening, panel. Good evening, Ian. My question is, given that Nigel Farage's belief of freedom of speech against protections of children, safeguarding, do you believe he's an ally of parents or an ally of child sex offenders?
Oh, that's quite a leap, I would say. Tim?
I wouldn't want to say he's either. That's not. My thoughts are that he is opportunistically libertarian on this issue. And isn't it?
That's what liberals always say when they become authoritarian.
Yeah. Well, not a libertarian. I'm a liberal. Being a liberal is more complicated. You've got to weigh stuff up.
We could have a wonderful deep discussion on the difference.
If you're libertarian, easy peasy, anything goes. So that's easy, but very rarely is it the right thing. All I'm going to say in terms of a negative on Nigel Farage, it's very peculiar that he unveiled Nadine Dorries at his conference, who wrote all this stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how he squares his newfound opposition to the act with sharing a platform with the people who wrote the jolly thing.
Emily?
I think it's a bit binary, that question. Is he as an ally to parents or sex offenders? Great question to put us on the spot, John in Reading. I
suppose we should remember that Peter Kyle, the former technology secretary, he did claim that Nigel Farage was on the side of the modern day Jimmy Saviles, which I thought was a pretty disgraceful thing to do.
I agree with you. I thought that was I thought that was maybe Peter Kyle and the Labour Party trying to do what Farage does, but not doing it very well. Yeah. They need maybe a bit more practice at throwing out those incredibly populist lines. I mean, let's not forget Farage said we were like North Korea, a couple of days ago in America. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement to make. But so I think this is all part of his shtick on cutting down on free speech, on freedoms, on libertarianism, locking people up for a tweet. So I think in reality, when it comes to it, he will be an ally to parents. And as you've just said, he understands what voters think. He's got focus groups out there, left, right and centre. He knows that there are parents sitting around going, we need to stop the power of big tech over our children. So I think he will refine those kind of arguments as he gets closer to an election if he thinks they're vote winners.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't take the binary nature of the question. I think I agree with Emily. I think he's likely to change over time. I mean, I feel conflicted on this because you do listen to some of the accounts from the United States where they start from a different place than we do. And they can be persuasive on questions like end-to-end encryption on WhatsApps. And they'll say, why would you build an app where the government can have a sort of backdoor into your messages? I get that kind of privacy argument. But ultimately, it feels like there has to be some protections. We've always asked for the government to step in on these questions. I think it's hard to argue that it's a bad thing that millions of children will find it much, much harder to access sort of awful pornography on their mobile phones. Like we have to have an attempt to stop 12-year-old boys, 13-year-old boys from accessing this stuff, in their pocket. That just is not an acceptable position.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone's kind of raising the right issues. But I do think this is all part of a bigger conversation about just what a mess the whole situation is. Quite frankly, I'm not even just bothered about kids. I'd like to see less pornographic material appearing on my feeds when I'm looking for news stuff. I seem to get all sorts of nonsense that appears, and I'm pretty sure that I haven't been searching for certain things, so I don't know what's happened to my algorithm, but I'm very worried about it. But I don't want to see some of this stuff, let alone youngsters. When you see what's out there, you do see that it is a minefield. But I'd like to see a more grown-up debate between some of the politicians, to be quite frank, because it's really serious stuff.
Quickly.
The question is, what do we want to be free from? Do we want to be free from government interference, or do we want to be free from the nefarious impact of huge corporations who are only interested in making money? Now, I think you can't be free from one and not the other. It's one or the other, I should say. And governments are massively imperfect, and we should try to rein them back. But if it's a case of the government attempting, however flawed a way, to protect young people from nefarious content, or it's X or Meta or whoever pushing this stuff in front of our kids because it makes them money, I know which side I think I'm on.
Right, we will move on to a different subject in just a few moments. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. only. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
21 minutes past 8 on LBC. Tim Farron is here, former leader of the Lib Dems, communications consultant Joe Tanner, Emily Sheffield, journalist and commentator, and Tom McTague, editor-in-chief of the New Statesman, who has written this massive book. It's very handsome cover as well. Only £25. Between the Waves, The Hidden History of a Very British Revolution, 1945 to 2016. 30-second elevator pitch.
Oh, God. This is the sort of the long story of how we got to Brexit. So it's not just, there was a few mistakes between 2010 and 2016. It's the full story from beginning to end, how Europe came about to begin with, how we've always struggled with our relationship with Europe, and how these kind of currents of history, they can often pull countries in different directions to how it looks on the surface, and who are the sort of the key characters behind Britain's long troubled relationship with Europe.
Well, it's had some great reviews so far. You must be very pleased. Just hope that translates into sales.
Yes, come on, everyone buy it.
And he's very on vogue. He's got a flag on the front.
Yeah, he has got. Has it? Yes, he has.
He went with the mood.
Yeah, reclaiming the British flag. It's unfortunately on top of a disintegrating sandcastle, but there we go. Right, let's go to another question. It's from Kieran in Earl's Court. Hello, Kieran.
Good evening, Ian, and good evening, panel members. Big fan of the show. Got a good eye up tonight too. My question is, will a bitter factional deputy leader election within the Labour Party mark the beginning of the end of Keir Starmer's premiership?
I know what it will mark: increasing circulation for the New Statesman.
Yeah.
Tom?
Look, I don't know if that will happen, but I think it's certainly the case that this spells real danger for the Prime Minister that he has to take incredibly seriously. We've now got candidates for the deputy leadership who are in effect kind of outriders.
Has anybody actually announced?
Well, we're likely to have, potential candidates, okay? So people like Lou Haig and Lucy Powell, those kind of figures. Now, they are being seen by Labour MPs as outriders for Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham, Prince across the water, the man in Manchester, King of the North, waiting to come down. People who are speaking to him and others around him believe that he has his eyes firmly set on the top job. Now, that should be seen as a realistic possibility now. I mean, that is the Boris Johnson model. That is perfectly plausible that happens. But fundamentally, it is now a challenge to Keir Starmer's leadership, ideologically and politically, not just whether, it's an outrider for Andy Burnham or not. This is an attempt.
Because he's actually said publicly that he would like one of those two to get it, hasn't he?
He has. He said Lucy Powell did an excellent job in government after she's just been sacked, and he called for the government to reset and to listen to MPs more. That's all very sensible things that a future leader of the Labour Party might say. And Andy has a lot of things going for him. He's an attractive speaker. He's got a clear message. He's calling for a change of direction, all things we've seen before. So this is a moment of real danger for Keir Starmer. It's the last thing he would have wanted. And we've been here before. We've been here in 1981, and it got incredibly vicious at that point. Because what we're going to see is a competition.
That was when Dennis Healey just beat Tony Benn.
Absolutely. And so we've got a contest now, which is very difficult for Keir Starmer to manage. How does he manage it? Any candidate that is seen as being a sort of Starmer or a government loyalist, it's the kiss of death. Yeah. They're not going to win. Yeah. So they have to have some kind of candidate that is mildly critical, acceptably critical, without having the government's, pat on the back. And that's the best that they can hope for.
And is this something where the New Statesman will declare for a particular candidate, do you think?
We haven't discussed that, but I don't think that's our position. I think our position at the Statesman should be to look. We want a progressive government. We want them to be achieving more than they're achieving. We want to kick them where necessary, but we don't want to see a reform government. So we have a clear position here, and we think that a reform government is a very, very likely scenario here. So these are kind of incredibly serious questions for anyone who wants to see a progressive government. So we have said, and we will probably continue to say, that one of the problems for this government is that they're not presenting a kind of clear ambition of what they want for left-wing voters to sort of take compromises, because you're prepared to take compromises if you're moving in a direction that you broadly want. that you're going to get things that you want. You're going to achieve great things with a majority of the size that Labour have got. Right now, to a lot of left-wing voters, it seems that it's all compromise and no benefit.
OK, Emily.
I mean, I just want to sort of follow up on what you've said, but just I wanted to make sort of one observation. I do think there is real trouble for Keir Starmer ahead in that, and again, it depends on who gets the deputy job, because although Number 10 are playing down how big this road is, they're like saying, well, they don't have a proper road in the government. Of course, if it becomes a sort of figure who wants to cause trouble, has the ear of the left-wing, sort of more left-wing, less progressive faction of the Labour Party, they can cause serious problems for Keir Starmer by stopping him achieving what he needs to do. And the appointment of Shabana Mahmood and what they do need to do on immigration, or they are definitely out, I think, at the next election, this is going to cause, I think this could cause really, really serious problems for Keir Starmer, in that it'll just stop him from achieving anything, which feeds in to the whole sort of line that you've just been saying, which everyone is aiming at this government, is that you don't really know what the story is. Now, I know the story just sounds, oh, well, that's, what does a story matter? Well, it's understanding what a government is for, what did change actually mean, and then following through. And I think what this government is repeatedly very, very weak at doing is preparing the ground in argument terms for what it does want to achieve. And there are going to be some very, very, I think, incredibly difficult decisions they're going to have to make around immigration. Okay. And they are going to really have to present their arguments. And if they have a difficult deputy leader who doesn't believe those arguments, who's on the left of the government, who find it absolutely disgusting that we might even think about closing down immigration, I mean, a huge mistake for the Labour Party, that is where they are going to reach really, really serious problems.
Jo Tanner.
I think it's a huge problem from a party management and even news management point of view. You've got a new team entering Number 10, and you've got, from a comms perspective, and you've also got resources that are stretched, and you've got a party conference that is just going to be completely derailed now. So from a sort of optics point of view, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to sort of keep the show on the road. I think even you can imagine the sort of leader's speech will be having to reflect a ton of accusations and sort of statements that have been made by various people. So right up until the last minute, what you want to be saying, but then actually what you might have to say could be very different things. And I think it doesn't really matter if you suggest that the position is not as important as it might have been before. If you say it's not going to be, it's not going to be a deputy PM, it's just a deputy leader, which is what's been said already. The challenge is that you're just going to have this figurehead of sort of dissent from within constantly. So they're going to have a platform, whether you give them one or not. Yeah. They have a platform by
And the
rights.
media will make sure they do have a platform.
And the media will. And the thing is, the comparison to sort of Prescott and Blair in the past has been made, and the fact that they were very different, but, they managed to make it work. But Blair was in a very different position in terms of where he was at, in terms of success and sort of momentum.
He could let John be John. That's
that was the point. He used to say, John's just being John, and he had sort of a very slick operation, and people knew what he was about. The challenge here is that you've got a party leader and a prime minister who's been on the back foot and is going to have, he's let people go. People have left government in difficult circumstances. And, you're absolutely right about the Andy Burnham point. Andy Burnham is out there. He's able to get on the airwaves for talking and talks on national issues repeatedly. Doesn't just talk about Manchester. And so I think the bigger thing is there's already, to the point about storytelling, there's already a problem with the narrative, and then that's all going to get blown up constantly.
And we don't know. We don't know what Angela Rayner's going to do yet. I think she might. We just don't know where her loyalty is going to lie. And if an Andy Burnham comes in and starts soaking up the airwaves, what are the people around her going to be saying? And I offered Andy a column in the Evening Standard, which he took pretty damn quickly. I remember it ruffled a lot of feathers with Sadiq Khan. He's got ambitions. I mean, I like him personally a lot, but then there's going to be could be some very large egos at play.
Was that the reason it shut down?
Could have been.
Tim Farron, you didn't have a deputy at first, did you? And then you appointed Joe Swinson. That worked out well.
It worked out very well for us both. Yeah, I mean, I think having a deputy who you rely on, who you trust, you like, helps an awful lot. I think obviously that Keir Starmer, the way the Labour Party works, he doesn't get to pick his deputy, and this is a real problem, as you observe. And I think that so either this person gets elected, whoever they are, probably from the left of the party, and he doesn't give them a cabinet role. in which case they absolutely will be an internal focus of opposition. It'd be massively damaging for Keir Starmer personally and of his authority and for party unity, or he does give them a cabinet role and there isn't one at the moment. He's going to have to invent one. And so it is going to be very, very difficult for him. I think the problem with all this, Emily talking about the story, I don't think this government has ever had one. We talked about Blair. In 1997, people wanted rid of the Tories, but there was also a wave of enthusiasm and optimism about Blair. Just over a year ago, there was a real desire to get rid of the Tories, and Labour got in because they were the most plausible dustbin for those protest votes. And in the end, Starmer had, a honeymoon period, not even as long as Liz Truss's premiership. And so the capital is in the bank. I'm not even quite sure what they're for. I don't think they're quite sure what they're for. And it's a shame that this will all be about personalities now. By the way, Andy Burnham might find it hard to get into Parliament because nearly every seat he might try and win in a by-election, Reform are probably quite strong in as well.
No, if Angela Rayner resigned her seat, if she decided, well, my future is outside politics, that is not a given that would stay a Labour seat.
I think most of us as somebody who really wish this government well, I'm really frustrated with them. There are big things they could be tackling and they're not. Social care, the NHS, close relationship with Europe, and they're doing none of those things.
2-word answer from each of you, and I mean 2 words. Who do you think will get it? I know no one's been declared yet, but we all know who the runners and riders are.
You can't do that because if you say 2 words, one of the potential candidates has got 3 in her name.
That's very true.
You can't
I'll give
that,
you 3
Iain.
if
That's
you want
wrong.
to. If you want 3, I'll give you 3.
Wow. I don't know who's going to stand, but I think someone like Rosanna, who came second last time round, could have a decent shot at this. She's built up a profile outside of politics as well, which could play to be quite interesting for her.
She and Keir do not get on. Tim?
I mean, there's a few that don't.
I agree. That's 2 words. Or sandwich word.
Okay,
Emily,
2 votes
Emily
for Rosanna.
Thornbury,
Emily?
I think I'm quite similar to Tom. I think Louise Haigh might get it.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolute gift to reform.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, they're already describing her as convicted fraudster.
I just think that is harsh. I mean, it was when she was 20, wasn't it? And she did tell people about this. I don't think we can condemn people for life.
I'm just saying what they're saying. I'm not saying that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's what they're going to throw at her.
They platform worse, don't they?
But also, I mean, just because the candidate comes from the left of the party or to the left of Keir Starmer, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a disaster for Keir Starmer. Part of managing a party and part of managing a government is building a coalition. Well, the left deserves a voice in that as well.
Louise Haigh, Rosanna Allen-Khan, the fight is yours.
They're both from my football team, so it's a nightmare for me, yeah. This is hard work for me.
I'm putting my weight behind Emily Thornbury.
Oh, what, another North London Labour lawyer is what we need? Okay.
Have a lot of the trots left the party now? I'm just thinking about
if they haven't, they're about to. Let's put it that way, if you get my drift. Right, let's move on. It's 8:33, time for the news headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
The mother of Brianna Jai has told LBC she wants to see smartphones banned in schools following the murder of her daughter. Esther Jai has told the Prime Minister not to be deterred by pressure from the United States. France's Prime Minister has lost a confidence vote and will now resign. Francois Bayrou had been trying to cut public spending to reduce his country's £3 trillion debt. And Heathrow Terminal 4 has been deemed safe to reopen after firefighters responded to what they were calling a hazardous materials incident. Airport staff say they're doing everything to make sure all flights can take off as planned. LBC weather becoming dry across much of the UK tonight. Isolated showers lingering in parts of the west, a low of 2 degrees.
This is LBC.
apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:36, Emily Sheffield, Tim Farron, Tom McTague and Joe Tanner with us. Next question is a text question from Rob in Carlisle. Is Yvette Cooper becoming Foreign Secretary just a reward for failure, Joe Tanner?
No. You wanted a one-word answer?
No, I said a brief answer, not necessarily one word.
I actually think, and I've heard it been said by other people, but I do agree. I think Keir Starmer's been a better Prime Minister on the international stage than he has on a domestic stage, and I think therefore, if you have a real problem with Yvette Cooper, sticking her in as Foreign Secretary would be a disaster because it's been going all right. You don't want to screw it up.
So why would you then move David Lammy if it's all been going all right on the international stage?
Because I think the point is you've got to a particular...
Someone he said that would still be Foreign Secretary at the next election.
But if you believe that, you want to use your talents the best you can, then I think actually moving people around is the right thing to do. I think Shabana was, it was clear that things were not working in the Home Office. I mean, it still potentially is more of a structural issue as well as who's in the top there. Failed. So I don't know if she'd failed, but I don't know whether there was, we don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. I don't know whether Shabana's come in saying, I want these things to be happening, or I want to be able to do these things to even take the job. Why would you want to take the job if you were offered it? The Home Office is like an absolute...
anyone would take the Home Office job if they were offered it. It's one of the top three jobs in government. You automatically become a future possible leader.
Or a total loser, because it's the biggest challenge that nobody knows what to deal with.
You've got to be glass half full.
No, I think that one is such a poison chalice. It really is. Tim. I wouldn't want it at all.
I'm not sure it is. I mean, I think, Yvette Cooper is a big hitter and a very competent person. Did she deliver in the Home Office on immigration and asylum? I think the issue is about more than one person. The idea that one individual in that department solves the problem, I think, is for the birds. The reality is that the issue of immigration, in particular the small boats and asylum, is a structural one. It's about politicians chasing what is perceived to be public opinion rather than sitting down and trying to challenge the problem as it really is. And we know that, compared to the rest of the European Union, those who are in the European Union, 3/4 of those member states take more asylum seekers than we do per head. But in our case, it's very visible because people turn up on boats on our shores. And so how can that be managed better in a way which is compassionate? And in the end, the deterrent, shall we say, for people making those crossings is about being efficient and capable and competent. And the last government's failure on this was that they didn't process asylum.
Slightly off the subject here.
Yeah, but we're talking about whether she was a failure or not. And I think if she didn't succeed in the Home Office on
if she was a success, she'd still be there.
Well,
that's the point.
Indeed. But I think I'm saying that one individual you cannot blame. This is about the way politics in general, politicians and the media relate to this particular issue, and that's the failure.
Emily.
Just on the notes, there's two parts to that question. No, I don't think becoming a Foreign Secretary is a reward for failure. I did think it was an odd move, I have to say. I didn't quite understand moving Lammy out, putting her in, except that maybe they just didn't want Yvette to be a troublemaker in any way. I think there were things she did fail on, but I think, like you, it must have been a collective thing. Indefinite leave to remain. They said they were going to do that months ago. Curb it. I don't think I've got time to explain what that is, but about 400,000 people in 2026 are going to have the indefinite right to remain here, where they get full access to absolutely everything. We could stop that right now. Government could stop it. It's not difficult. So I don't know what the hold-up is on that. May White Paper had loads of things in it. I've seen literally no action on any of it. So I think the moving of the new secretary, Home Secretary, is that she's got sort of better legal grasp. I'm guessing. I don't know whether she's going to be able to carry out what is needed, because what is needed is so huge. We are going to have to deal with the 1951 Refugee Convention. They are going to have to deal with Article 8. And at the moment, what we've heard from her today, in the last couple of days, is that, they're going to do a bit of visa discussion about the visas. If you don't let us return them, we're going to sort of stop you getting visas.
But I think that's quite an impressive proposal. If you're trying to appeal for possible reform voters, that's the sort of thing you do.
But that's still about those who've been refused asylum here. It's not people coming over in the boats. So there's going to have to be much bigger things than that. And by the way, that was something also Yvette was talking about. That's not actually a new announcement. It was in this May White Paper.
Okay.
So, and then there's Article 8 of the the ECHR, and then she's mentioned, she's mentioned the ID cards. They're not going to bring ID cards in, and I don't think they're going to stop the problem anyway.
Tom, losing Yvette Cooper from the Home Office and the Immigration Minister, Angela Eagle, I think she's gone to DEFRA.
Army, yeah.
You're losing a lot of institutional knowledge there.
Yeah, look, what's going on here is that it's a move to the right. And it's a move to the right to a certain type of Labour ideology, the blue Labour ideology, that Shabana is the principal representative of. So it is a clear direction of travel that the government have taken. Shabana is to the right of Yvette Cooper on almost all questions. And so
Yvette Cooper used to be thought of as being on the right.
Not in this government. Shabana is clearly to the right of her. Yvette Cooper, Keir Starmer is not strong enough at the moment to have removed Yvette Cooper from the government or demoted her. So he has found a berth for her. Now, to be fair to Yvette, she will say that she has done a lot of work behind the scenes, and this will be then handed on to Shabana, who will be able to take credit for it. So there will be, and I'm sure there is some truth to that. And the other thing that I think has been slightly missed is that David Lammy becoming Justice is that he is also quite socially conservative. And so there is a suggestion as well that will be a kind of amplifying effect on this move to the right, on these core positions in government. So it's Keir Starmer making his bet.
And the new Immigration Minister, Alex Norris, he would be considered on the right.
And you will also take the key departments on the economic agenda, is a move to the Blair right. So you combine that together, and what you've got is a bet, because the government is fairly clear on this. If you talk to people around Keir Starmer, there are three things they need to do to have a chance of winning the next election. They need to cut migration, stop the boats, so take that as one. They need to start growing the economy, and then the third thing is they need to cut waiting times on the NHS. And so they have now made their bet on the people that are in these positions, and so it's up to them. It's this sort of
Right. Another question from Darryl in Hove. There were 857 arrests made in Parliament Square on Saturday, allegedly for supporting Palestine action. This has meant criminalising peaceful pensioners and causing police resources to become increasingly stretched. Is it time for the government to review their decision to prescribe this group, or alternatively amend the Terrorism Act itself? Or should they double down and employ even more police to deal with these protests? Emily Sheffield.
When they prescribed them as a terrorist group, I did think, oh, God, this is going to be a massive problem. I agreed. I agreed with what they were doing. I do think there are elements within this group that I'm sure absolutely deserved to be called that. And I'd like to think our security services don't lie to the general public. I'd like to think that our governments don't lie to the general public. But you just knew this was going to become an absolute nightmare with 101 grannies and anyone just turning up and then being arrested. And how big are these numbers going to get? I was in an area of London on Sunday, and like 3 friends of mine walked past who'd just been at that. They hadn't been arrested, but they were there. They're happening in London, where there are, thousands upon thousands of people who feel hugely sympathetic to what's happening in Gaza. So I don't know how they get around this. I'm sorry. I wish I did have an answer of how they get around this, but I don't.
Tim Farron.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was a mistake. I understand why you wouldn't want to be associated with them, and undoubtedly the vandalism that they did, you could argue, is typical of a terrorist group in one respect. But the people who are out protesting, they're not terrorists. They're not seeking to damage military equipment and what have you. And I think this is a real test. So much of the talk, we saw Reform Conference in the last few days, is about freedom of speech. Anybody can support freedom of speech for people that they like and agree with. The mark of a proper liberal is, are you prepared to accept and indeed defend the right of freedom of speech and of social and of action, non-violent action, of people you don't agree with? And I think that's where we need to be. I would love to see more politicians defending the rights of free speech of the people they don't agree with.
Tom?
I agree with that. I think what I worry about here is that the sort of centre doesn't seem to be holding. On one side, you have Graham Linehan being arrested by 5 police officers at Heathrow. And on the other side, you have grannies or anybody else who understandably see what's happening in Gaza as appalling and are protesting about it and are being arrested as terrorists. It seems an absurd situation. We ran in the New Statesman a cover story by Jonathan Sumption, who can hardly be seen as a kind of lefty on these matters. And he was saying that there is a plausible case that it's war crimes and genocide in Gaza. Now, if that is happening, it is completely right and justified to be campaigning against it, and campaigning against it angrily. And if this is happening while we're all sat around here, then it is a real problem.
But you can do that without writing placards supporting what the government believes is a terrorist group or terrorist supporting group.
But I just think, why are they a terrorist group? It seems completely over the top.
Well, because they attacked planes in an RAF base.
But that was against the law. You arrest them for that.
Indeed.
Vandalism or whatever. I mean, it must be a crime to break into an MOD.
But aren't there lots of arguments that we haven't been told because we're not allowed to see it for, security stuff? Is they do actually believe that this group is definitely infiltrated by people who they can prescribe as terrorists. I wish everyone would stop supporting them. I don't see why you need to be part of this to go and march around what's happening in Gaza.
But people are being arrested for placards, aren't they?
That's right.
But I think if it depends what's on the placard, and I just don't understand. If you really care about what's happening in Gaza, why do you need to have a placard with Palestine Action written on it? I do worry that quite a lot of people who are turning up to these marches, yes, they care about what's going on in Gaza, but what they really love is sort of like, it is a bit of sort of what's the word? Where you're
I don't know.
You're turning. It is a bit of sort of like extra armchair, sort of moral waving, because you don't need to turn up and care about Gaza and have Palestine Action written on your placard.
I know, but those
they're
words.
doing it as it's all getting wrapped up.
Joe.
God, everyone's trying to silence
I think that is the fundamental problem. The people that are turning up, there's two types of people that are turning up. The issue is you can support action in Palestine or action on Palestine. The difference is Palestine Action are a group that have, organised big weekends where they teach you how to take part in activism. They train you to do things. They train you on how to, break into places and do stuff. It's a very different it's a very different set of sort of actions that they're talking about when they do these big recruitment events. There's clearly stuff the security services know that we don't know about, but the difference is that what's happened, I think, is that people that are supporting that direct action type approach, of which a lot of it is illegal. I mean, people have been hit over the heads with tools and stuff when people have broken into workplaces and stuff. There's been some pretty unpleasant stuff happening, and they damaged a very significant plane that was owned by the UK government.
Also, there was some very serious violence against the police at this march.
Exactly.
So I think
but that's the difference.
Becoming split in, and I just wish I could say to those grannies, are you really pro our aeroplanes that might defend us being sabotaged? Are you pro the men and or women, I don't know who they were, who attacked our police officers just for trying to keep law and order? But that's where it's all got
conflated, and people don't quite know, I think, what they're turning up for.
And what's that got to do with Gaza? It's completely taking away from Gaza.
Some of these planes, though, are used on overlooking flights, and there are legitimate questions about our role arming.
Okay, well, we're not going to get into that right now, because otherwise we'll be here for the rest of the evening on that particular one. Somebody says Reform are polling at 35%. Why no Reform politician on the panel or someone with similar opinions to Reform? Well, you'll be very pleased to know that tomorrow we have Sarah Pochin, the Reform MP, on the panel. We can't possibly have everybody from every political party on the panel because we've only got 4 chairs.
They're probably all a bit hungover from their big weekend as well. They were serving pints quite early, I gather.
Speak for yourself, Joe. Right, time for a break. 10 to 9.
This is LBC.
risk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It is 8:52 on LBC. Final plug for this magnificent book, Between the Waves by Tom McTague. A great Christmas present for anyone interested in British and European politics.
Are you on commission?
No. But there's an idea.
There is an idea.
Emily Sheffield is here, Joe Tanner and Tim Farron. Right, a text question from Carly in Hendon. Tube workers have brought London to a standstill again today by going on strike in the hope of yet another pay rise. I'm not sure it is about a pay rise, is it? I think it's what they want, a 32-hour working week.
I suppose
is it time to solve this problem once and for all and move towards having driverless trains on the tube? Emily Sheffield is gagging to get into this one.
Okay, so I feel particularly angry about this because I think the damage done to businesses in London is huge. It's running at 200 to 300 million for this week alone. I should say I have a personal stake in this. My husband runs restaurants. I just don't think people understand the horrendous damage it's doing to businesses and the losses they will make. And this is over, just so everyone's clear listening. They are striking. They've brought London to a standstill for a whole week because they want their hours reduced from 35 to 32 per week. These are for people, for drivers who do a very good job, absolutely in support of them, but they are earning between £65,000 and £75,000 per annum on a 35 per hour week. And they get loads of overtime pay as well. And I think to most people living in London, struggling to get by in a cost of living crisis who earn half of that, quarter of that, are going to feel really, really angry. Business owners who earn a lot less than that are going to feel really angry about why this is happening. Now, I agree with the driverless trains. I think the trouble is what the unions don't understand is that the more they do this, the more TfL is going to move towards driverless trains and just move humans out of the equation. But also, there is something the government can do. We did bring in a Strikes Minimum Level Services Act in 2023. I think that needs to be re-looked at about what it means to have a minimum service.
I think Labour are repealing that.
And I think, well, it's a terrible idea if Labour do that, but then, 2.24 million given to them by the unions prior to the elections, so no doubt they made some promises. But if we don't get a grip on this,
I'm not sure the RMT did, to be fair.
We don't know. I don't.
Well,
I checked, and it said there's no record, yes or no, because it's not necessarily hidden which union gives what. It's not. You don't have to declare it. So, as my understanding is, I could be wrong on that. But the government can get a grip on this, and I think the problem is if whatever government is, Reform, Conservative, Labour, if we keep seeing sort of things sort of grind to a halt. And businesses get hurt and workers get hurt and everyone's saying, oh, there's nothing we can do. Sadiq Khan's tweet today was, oh, I do hope TfL and that the union can get back round the table. We have a government that has the power to change legislation. It should be more than just a minimum level. You should not be able to hold a whole city and thousands upon thousands of businesses in this city held to ransom because a bunch of train drivers want to reduce their hours they want to reduce their working hours by just 3 hours per week.
And also the RMT has rejected a 3.4% pay rise offered by Transport for London. Tom McTague.
Look, I understand why Emily's frustrated, and I don't want to see a strike in London. I would say, though, the idea of moving to driverless trains I find pretty dispiriting. I mean...
Why?
Because Docklands
Light Railway operates quite well.
Because I want people to have good jobs where they're well paid, and they're kind of the jobs that you understand. You have a system that works with good jobs associated with it. You go into the tubes now on the trains and all the rest, and it's so frustrating that you can't deal with humans. That humans have disappeared, and we have these systems that kind of don't function.
We would agree with that, but the unions are going to. I don't want driverless trains, but the unions are going to force us to that because you cannot have a union hold a city to ransom.
I understand it, but 3.4% pay rise, £65,000 a year will sound a lot to a lot of people, and I take your point about that, Emily. But also, £65,000 now in London, unfortunately, does not lead to a sort of life of luxury.
No, but it's double the average wage.
In London, 30.
No, the average wage in the whole country is around 34,000.
Absolutely,
so
but what is the price of it? But the price of a house in London is about double the price in the rest of the country, and is now unaffordable for people to live on what they should be able to live on. So we do have a problem where jobs that used to be good jobs, well paid, doctors, nurses, teachers, and all the rest, train drivers.
Point. Nurses in London are paid less, 65 to 75,000. There are loads of people who run businesses in London.
I need to bring in the other two panel members. Jo, you live in London?
I do. I actually bought myself an electric moped over the summer, but I've been a bit too scared to use it today because I thought it might be a bit busy out there. But I am going to have a go at bringing it into London at some point.
Moped,
honestly, it's going to be a vision. It really is. It's going to stop traffic, probably. There might be Londoners on strike asking me not to do it. But I've lived through this for years. I've travelled into London for work, etc. It's an absolute nightmare. And I understand the points made about the reason for the strike, but there's also been some pretty confused messaging about like how long the shifts are and it feels like there's a sort of series of things that are, as with a lot of these industrial actions, you get sort of a series of problems that come out that people are concerned about. But what I don't get is this is such a spectacular own goal when we've been trying to get people back onto public transport, back into the city, back using restaurants, back going to events, back actually into workplaces. And instead, this is just reminding everybody that they can work at home, that there are a lot of jobs they can do that they don't need to come into town for. And I think that's the most depressing thing about this, because there's been a lot of investment. Even, Sadiq Khan was changing Fridays and what was peak travel, what was off peak. There's been a lot of effort to get people back into city, and I just think this is the sort of thing that turns people off, and I just think that's a disaster for small businesses, big businesses, people that have got those jobs.
By the way, will give TfL more money to pay their drivers.
Well, actually, we should point out, as Paul says here, and I should have pointed this out, that the RMT is not the train drivers' union. There are some train drivers in the RMT, but they're mainly in ASLEF, so it's the sort of ancillary staff as well. Tim?
I think it will do, and will have done today, significant damage to parts of the economy in London. It'll do most damage, though, as we've just said, to the tube. People will make different choices. I enjoyed my walk in from Euston to Parliament today. It was 45 minutes. I listened
to a nice walk that podcast. At your age?
Yeah, indeed, yes. Well, I was delighted to do it. I mean, I flippantly would say that if there was a public transport strike in Cumbria, 3/4 of us wouldn't notice, because we haven't got any. So there's a sense in which we sort of raise our eyebrows at all these whining Londoners. And but when all said and done, this is the nation's capital. We expect the economy to work properly. I tend to think that politicians sniping at either side during industrial disputes makes them more likely to go on for longer. And the one thing I would say is you
get off
that
sit fence, around. Tim Farron.
I'm being all Lib Dem and all sensible as well. You solve this by talking, not by foghorn diplomacy.
Our fun question is from Frida in Gateshead. The roughly 60,000 people who completed the Great North Run from Newcastle to South Shields have been given their medals, only for someone to realise the map on the medal is actually of Sunderland, not Newcastle. When has your sense of geography gone spectacularly wrong? Did you get horribly lost, or try to provide directions to someone and send them completely the wrong way? Jo Tanner.
I've not done that, but I'm pretty sure I didn't do very well at French at school, because when you had to ask the directions to somewhere, and if I asked the directions to somewhere in English, I couldn't follow them very well. So when they're then in a foreign language, it's been an absolute disaster for me, because I've got no idea what anyone says.
That's Jo Tanner, communications consultant. Tim Farron.
So I live less than an hour from Scotland. I love Scotland, and the first 2 times I went to Scotland were by accident. First, I was driving the Newcastle University Students' Union minibus somewhere in Northumberland and took a wrong turning, ended up in Coldstream, time 1. Time 2, I was meant to go to an NUS meeting in London, and suddenly realised I'm sure we normally go over the Tyne, and ended up in Edinburgh first stop. So my first 2 visits to Scotland by mistake.
Fantastic. Tom McTague.
I was trying to think about this, and we were chatting off air, Emily and I, about maps, old maps, and I think that was the last time I got completely lost. It was up a mountain with my 3 best friends in Ireland, who were trying to do something called the Irish 4-Peak Challenge, where you do all of the 4 peaks in the 4 provinces. And we got to the second one, and we got to the top, and we cheered ourselves because we were ahead of schedule, and then we came down the wrong side of the mountain, got stuck on in the pitch black, had to be rescued the next day, and we made a small little nib in the Irish Mirror, 4 English boys stuck on a mountain.
Well, that'll teach you. Excellent. Emily?
Same, because I was saying, you've got Google Maps these days. I have no sense of direction. I can walk out of a building where I should definitely be going right. I'll turn left. I've worked off Oxford Street for literally half my working life. I could still get lost, still wouldn't really understand which way is Tottenham Court Road and which way is the other one. But I do have Google Maps now. But I, like you, went on a walk. We challenged ourselves to put our smartphones away. And we got a survey map out, my husband and I, and a friend of ours. And we got staggeringly lost. But we had a really good time getting staggeringly lost. Yes. So I'm all for putting the smartphone
the former
away and
editor of the London Evening Standard, getting lost in London. Thank you all very much indeed. Really entertaining programme. On tomorrow we have MPs from each of Labour, the Conservatives and Reform UK, namely Rosie Writing, Sir Ashley Fox and Sarah Pochin, plus the Mail on Sundays, Dan Hodges. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to return to the subject of online safety as part of LBC's Online Safety Day. One of the architects of the Online Safety Act, former Conservative MP Damian Collins, will join me to take your calls. And the overarching question for this hour, I think, is this. Has the Online Safety Act been a force for good? If it has, how could it be improved? Or even if it hasn't, well, especially if it hasn't, I suppose, how could it be improved? Do you take a libertarian view on these things like Nigel Farage, or do you think, no, the responsible thing for any politician, any government, is to try and do the maximum to protect our children? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, education leaders have warned they're not receiving enough support, with hundreds of students being suspended every week over their social media use. Former Deputy Prime Minister and Facebook boss Sir Nick Clegg is one of those backing a ban of phones in schools. He's been speaking to us as part of our second Online Safety Day. Tim Farron, Liberal Democrat environment spokesperson, also told LBC that keeping children safe is incredibly important.
It's not just what mobile phones lead to, it's kind of a whole range of things that keep young people from other experiences. As many brighter people than me have observed, perhaps over the last few generations, we have kept children so safe, we've done them harm. And in doing so, we've allowed them to not build resilience, to not get a love of the outdoors. So I think that a balance sheet of smartphones, for young people at least, is clearly negative.
Well, also today, ministers have announced tougher rules to tackle self-harm content. Social media platforms will have to proactively find and remove the material or face huge fines. French Prime Minister François Bayrou has failed in a last-ditch attempt to save his job after losing a confidence vote he called himself.